Critics of gas flaring in Nigeria say that it actually kills people. Is that true?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there is no scientific evidence for that. It isn't as if you are putting the flares into people's home. Um, the flares are out there in the field. I imagine that. And let me now say something here. I know that the World Bank is looking at this because one of the issues raised all the time. There was a point that people thought it increases acid rain and therefore affects people's roofing shades. And those studies haven't borne that out. And I know that the health issue, I mean, there are all sorts of things that you have to study to arrive at that. It's so complex. We've asked the World Bank to look at that as industry, not as Shell, as Nigerian industry has asked the World Bank to look at it. Let's see, what there is. It's very difficult for a non-professional like myself to make a pronouncement on that.
I've seen in a documentary some Nigerian women claiming that they've lost their babies as a result of the flaring. Is that something that, obviously it's something that would concern you, but is it something that you would find to be a fact?
I would find it very strange indeed that that would be the case, to be frank. And like I said again, I said somebody does some baseline studies and try and discriminate between regions with flares and regions without flare. But flaring is an emotive issue. I think that's what you hear. It's an emotive issue, and it's also used politically. You will understand that the real crisis of the Delta, the real crisis in the Delta is the people of the region believe they don't receive enough, they believe they should receive more share from the oil revenue than they currently get. And one of the justification for that is that they take the environmental consequences of the operation. And you can understand that people want to drum that, and there could be exaggeration when you try to do that. And I won't be surprised that so dramatization is part of trying to justify where there should be significant more fund. I personally believe they should get more, but I also believe that what they have can be spent better, but I believe they should get more simply because walking on the ground ourselves, we know how vast the terrain is. The Delta is big. It's about the size of England, and in very difficult, swampy location, expensive to build roads and bridges, and so I think they just deserve a little bit more. That's my view, and I think probably the view of most Nigerians. But these are constitutional matters which can only happen by a constitutional review. It's not just something government can do, and that's why it's not so easy to resolve. And if you really ask the people of the region, in the end, if you really ask them, what do you want from companies? If in sober moment they really say, we just want you to be advocates for us with the government. We recognize this is it's not your duty to do development. You want to be on the table but not the lead. But our government don't just listen to us. We wish you would be good advocate with us, for us, with the government. And we try to do that all the time, really. Really being advocates for the community is really part of something I love to do as country chair, talking on central government level or any fora where poverty and development is discussed.
You can see, can't you, that poor people living in the Delta who are being educated by Shell, and their health is being looked after by Shell, and they're being funded by Shell in so many different ways, there must be surely a blur between what is government and what is Shell.
It is true, but there was no way we couldn't respond to need on the ground. That's the truth. You recognize that the more you take on, the more you expose yourself to it. But if there is a need on the ground, I think just your basic business principles require you to respond to the need on the ground. recognizing that, of course, the biggest change can come by you working with government to play their role properly, rather than you ever being, and then there's no chance you can ever be a substitute for government or for good governance. So we do recognize that and that dilemma, and it's something we have to live with.
Looking historically at Shell's reputation in Nigeria, I suspect that probably the biggest reputational damage that was ever done to Shell in Nigeria was the killing of Ken Saro-Wiwa. What role did Shell play in that? Should Shell hang its head in shame at all about the role that it played? And the Ogoni people have never forgiven Shell, have they?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you say Ogoni people, because you get all shades of opinions in Ogoni. I think the Ogoni people recognize that Shell had absolutely nothing to do with the death of Saro-Wiwa. If you talk to Ogonis, leadership I know very well, a lot of them my friends, and Ogoni people, none of them will actually tell you Shell killed Saro-Wiwa. I'm not saying that.
But he was very critical of Shell, wasn't he?
Oh, of course he was very critical of Shell and the oil companies. I think Shell happens to be the one operating a Ogoni line. He was very critical of oil companies because he saw them as the entity through royalties and taxes went to the central government rather than the local people. But the companies had to work according to the law of the land. And if the law of the land has said tax and royalty went to the local people, the companies would pay to the local people. So, yeah, I think Shell was such, and it was so unfair that Shell should be internationally be connected with the death of Saro-Wiwa. There could be nothing further from the truth.
How long will it be before we then heal the rift with the Ogoni people and we see Shell again operating in Ogoni land?
No, we've worked on that. Several governments have worked on that, especially the last government over the 8 years. We've tried so many ways to reach a reconciliation. But you need to understand, like I said earlier, the issue is not about Shell and the Ogonis. If it was just between Shell and Ogoni, it would have been resolved a long time ago. The issue is really about the Ogonis and Nigeria. It's about ownership of the resource on the ground, and that's the complex issue. But where we are today, I think the government is thinking of actually getting the government partner in our company to operate the fields, and Shell is quite happy for that to happen, because the joint operating agreement we have, there are 4 partners in our joint venture: Shell, NNPC for government, Total, and Ajib. And it says any of the 4 partners can operate any of the fields. And our current agreement is that maybe it's better that the government partner in the company operates the Ogoni field, as they do in quite many other parts of our acreage. And that enables us to build relationships with Ogoni, focusing on restoring the environment where there have been a lot of pollution post our withdrawal from people who go there stealing crude oil from the wellheads. And most times it goes wrong, there's fire and there's oil spill, and we go there to put out the fire, but never really have the permit to go on and sort out the whole environment. That we are doing now, making a lot of progress. We've made a commitment to clean up the whole environment and restore the environment. That hopefully makes the peace between us and the Ogonis, while the issue of future operatorship will be done by another partner in a venture rather than ourselves. We think that's really probably the fastest way to resolve the matter.